There are two different methods to deal with line weights in gCADPlus drawings. You can set the thickness of every entity that you place in the drawing. I've got line weight turned on at the moment with the LWT switch. If I pick this tan coloured entity here, it's a polyline. It has line weight set at 1mm pen, so it obviously appears very, very thick. This line here is set at 0.35, whereas the stone rounds here, or steppers, are very fine line, 0.18. So this drafter is setting line weights implicitly, doing it as he goes, working on different entities. And that's one way to do it. And it works, especially if you plan your layout and how your layout is going to work. Let's double click in here, and this layout needs to be changed markedly to encompass not necessarily the whole site, but we'll just make it encompass the rear area and display it on the model. Oops, sorry, display it on the model. Now deactivate that viewport, and now when we move in, you can see the thick lines appearing. I think there's a bit of poor drafting there, but we'll deal with that in a little while. So can you see that the lines are set implicitly? As I said, that works fine. There's another little layer here which I think we can remove, and that will enable us to stretch the floating viewport out so that it occupies the whole of the page space. The other approach to handling line weights is in some ways a better approach, because if you move to a different size sheet, this layout sheet here, we go to the Layouts Manager, is an A2 sheet. Now if we did another layout, made a new one, let's do that, Format, Layout, and we'll make a new one on A4, and we'll make it Portrait, that's fine. And if we look in here, and you'll see a huge, because it's a much smaller piece of paper, your line weights are massive and get distorted. So what I'm going to do next is show you an alternative, and I think a better way to manage line weights in a drawing. Well, let's look at an alternative way of handling line weights. So I'll click into the drawing and go Zoom Extents, and what I'll do is go to Tools and Selection and select All. That grabs everything in the drawing. You could put a crossing window or a window around all of those. And if you look over here in the Properties box, the line weight varies. So we'll set it to by layer. Now when we zoom back in here, all the lines are drawn with a standard thickness, which is going to be controlled by layer. So if we move down here and we look at the building footprint, you can see it's on a layer called Building Outlines, as are these columns or blocks. Here's a column that's on Building Outlines. So let's imagine we wanted those plotted with a heavier line. So instead of having to go right through the drawing, set every one of them, and then if we want to change later, we've got to reset every individual entity. It's much easier to control line weight by layer. So if we come here and set Building Outlines, all you need to do is click on this line weight tab, move down, and we'll set it at 0.5 of a millimeter pen, and now the lines are drawn very thickly. So you can see that in a layout view, if you wanted to change that and work on a smaller piece of paper in a layout and you wanted a finer line, just come up here and change, say, to 0.3, and we'll OK it. Now when we zoom in, you can see the line is still thicker, but it's relatively finer than the one we just had. So if you, provided you organise your drawing and control everything by layers, and this drawing's partly been done that way. If we pick the dimension, it's on a layer called LDIM. If we pick one of the plants, that's on a layer called Plants. So we could work on the hardscape elements, on the layout of the physical paths and so on, the buildings, much more effectively if we simply turned off the dimension layer and turned off the plants layer. they're now gone, and we can work happily in this space dividing it up. It's interesting that the rounds that were part of what I thought they were rounds moving through here have disappeared. So I think they're on the wrong layer. Here's a plant symbol which is on a layer called building outlines, which clearly is incorrect. So to move it to its correct layer, we can click in here and just move it to the plants layer. So let's click in here again, and we'll turn on our plants layer and see what happens to those rounds. Yes, so these rounds, and I'm not sure, this is not my design, I'm not sure what they represent, but they're clearly on a plants layer, and I doubt very much that they are plants. So when working with layers and you're unsure, as I am, just move them on to layer 0 and we can deal with them later.